First contact and initial conflict. The human vessel Perseverance drifted through the asteroid field, its bulky frame maneuvering with surprising agility between the spinning rocks. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display, as the ship's unorthodox thrusters fired in short, controlled bursts. "Status report," she called, adjusting her rumpled uniform. After 15 years in the United Earth Space Command, Elena had developed a reputation for getting results through unconventional means. "All systems operational, Commander," replied Lieutenant Kai Chen from the navigation console, "though I'd use the term operational loosely for half our systems." Elena smiled. The Perseverance wasn't pretty. Its design prioritized function over form, with redundant systems layered upon redundant systems, where newer military vessels featured streamlined hulls and automated everything. The Perseverance class embraced a different philosophy, one that assumed things would go wrong. "Commander," called Communications Officer Priya Sharma, her fingers dancing across her console, "we're detecting an unknown signal. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Elena straightened. "Origin. Beyond the asteroid field. It's massive, sir." "Put it on screen." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a vessel that made the Perseverance look like a child's toy by comparison. Where the human ship was all angles and pragmatic design, this vessel was sleek perfection, a gleaming silver teardrop that seemed to glide through space without effort, surrounded by a halo of smaller craft in perfect formation. "Beautiful," whispered Kai. "They're hailing us," Priya reported, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the bridge. Elena took a deep breath. First contact. The moment humanity had been preparing for since they reached the stars. Except the transmission. The face that appeared on screen wasn't what anyone expected. The alien had sleek, iridescent scales covering delicate features. Its eyes were bright violet with vertical pupils, and what appeared to be crystalline structures protruded from its temples. "I am High Commander Vexella of the Astrine Empire," the alien said, its mouth moving in perfect sync with the translated words. "Your vessel has entered territory under Astrine protection. Identify yourself immediately." Helena stepped forward. "I am Commander Elena Reyes of the Earth vessel Perseverance. We are on a peaceful exploration mission, and we're unaware this sector belonged to anyone. We offer friendship and peaceful exchange." The alien's vertical pupils contracted. "Earth? Your species is unknown to us." Vexilla tilted its head, eyes moving over what it could see of the bridge. "Your vessel. It appears most peculiar. Our scans indicate numerous redundant systems, and are those manual controls?" "Yes," Elena replied with pride. "The Perseverance is designed to remain operational under almost any circumstances." A sound emerged from Vexilla that the translator didn't catch, but it sounded distinctly like amusement. "Fascinating. A species that builds expecting failure." The alien commander's expression shifted to one that even across species barriers, Elena recognized as condescension. "The Astrine Empire welcomes contact with developing civilizations. We invite you to our nearest outpost to establish formal relations." 3 days later, Elena sat with her senior officers in a perfectly geometric conference room aboard the Astrine station. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the temperature adjusted automatically to human comfort, an impressive but obvious display of technological superiority. High Commander Vexella sat across from them, flanked by other Astrine officials whose titles Elena couldn't quite keep straight. They had spent hours discussing trade and cultural exchange, but the conversation kept circling back to human technology, particularly their ships. "Your vessel's design philosophy is most curious," said an Astrine official named Teslar, who apparently specialized in technological assessment. "You build as if expecting catastrophic failure at every turn." "Because systems do fail," Elena replied. "Space is dangerous and unpredictable." "Only if your technology is fundamentally flawed," Vexella interjected. "Astrine vessels have not experienced a critical failure in over 700 cycles." Lieutenant Chen leaned forward. And if you encountered something completely new, something you couldn't have anticipated? The Astrine Empire anticipates all possibilities through superior design and perfect execution. Vexilla responded without hesitation. Your human approach of what you call redundancy is merely inefficient. And these backup systems you describe, mechanical controls, physical star charts, emergency protocols for every conceivable situation. These are the marks of a species that doesn't trust its own creations, or a species that respects the unknown, Elena countered. The meeting continued for hours, with the Astrines explaining their advanced propulsion systems, their perfect communication networks, their flawless defense capabilities. With each explanation, their tone grew more dismissive of human achievements. As they walked back to their shuttle, Priya whispered to Elena, "They think we're children playing with sticks." Elena nodded grimly. "And that worries me." Over the next few weeks, the Perseverance crew learned more about the Astrines. They were an ancient species that had mastered interstellar travel millennia before humans left Earth. They had encountered dozens of other species, most less advanced than themselves. The Astrines spoke of these encounters as guiding developing civilizations, but something in their tone made Elena uncomfortable. Her concerns grew when Lieutenant Chen discovered hidden files in the data the Astrines had shared, files that showed what happened to species that refused Astrine guidance. They'd been systematically expanding their influence, Elena said, as they reviewed the evidence in a secure briefing room. Not through outright conquest, at least not usually. They establish contact, share limited technology to create dependency, and then gradually assert control. "And if a species resists?" asked Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez. Elena pointed to the screen showing the remnants of a planet called Niluris. "They make examples." "We need to warn Earth," Priya said. "Already done," Elena replied. "But the message will take weeks to reach home through subspace. Until then, we maintain diplomatic relations." The next day, High Commander Vexilla invited Elena to observe Astrine military exercises, a display of friendship, as it was described. Elena watched as 100 Astrine ships moved in perfect formation, executing maneuvers with precision that human fleets could only dream of. Their tactics were flawless, their coordination perfect. "Impressive," Elena admitted. "This is merely a basic exercise," said Vexilla. "The Astrines understand true strategy, not the disorganized improvisation that humans call warfare." "What do you mean?" asked Elena, keeping her tone curious rather than defensive. "We've studied your military history," Vexilla explained. "Your commanders praise adaptability and unpredictability. You value the ability to, how do you say, think on your feet. True strategy requires perfect planning and execution, not desperate improvisation." As Elena watched the Astrine ships move like a single organism, she thought about Earth's military history, about battles won by breaking formation, about victories claimed through surprise and adaptation, about the countless times that humanity's desperate improvisation had saved them from extinction. "Perhaps," Elena said carefully, "different species develop different approaches based on their experiences." Vexilla made that untranslatable sound again, definitely amusement. "A diplomatic answer, Commander Reyes. But history favors perfection, not improvisation. Remember that when your people consider their response to our offer of guidance." As Elena returned to the Perseverance that evening, she knew that conflict was inevitable. The Astrines would never accept humanity as equals, and humans would never accept being controlled. "Set course away from the Astrine outpost," she ordered as she reached the bridge. "We need to prepare." Behind them, the perfect formations of Astrine ships continued their flawless exercises, unaware that they would soon face an enemy that thrived on the very chaos they despised. 2 months after first contact, the Perseverance orbited humanity's largest colony on the planet Nuterra. Commander Elena Reyes stared at the message on her screen with a deep frown. "They can't be serious," she muttered. "What is it, Commander?" asked Priya, who stood nearby monitoring communications. Elena turned the screen so she could see. The Estrenes are demanding that all human colonies accept their protection. They want permanent Estrian bases on every human world and veto power over our expansion efforts. That's not protection, Priya said. That's control. Elena nodded grimly. Earth Command agrees. They've rejected the demands. The door to the bridge slid open as Lieutenant Chen entered. Commander, you wanted to see me. Yes. Elena gestured to the screen. We're being assigned to protect the outer colonies. Earth expects the Estrenes to make a show of force. Chen studied the message, his eyes narrowing. They'll target smaller outposts first, make an example without risking full-scale war. That's what Command thinks too. We're heading to Haven's Point. It's our most distant colony and the most vulnerable. 3 days later, the Perseverance arrived at Haven's Point, a small mining colony with only basic defenses. They weren't alone for long. Within hours, 5 Estrene warships appeared at the edge of the system. They're hailing us, Priya reported. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced Estrene with decorative crystalline structures extending further from its temples than Vexala's, apparently a sign of higher rank. I am Supreme Tactician Zektor of the Estrene Enforcement Fleet, the alien announced. You will remove your vessel from this system immediately. This colony now falls under Estrene protection. Elena stood tall. This is a human colony on a planet we discovered and settled. We reject your claim. Zektor's violet eyes seemed to flash. Your rejection is noted, Commander, but meaningless. One human ship cannot stand against even a small Estrian force. Your strategy of placing outdated vessels as defenders is puzzling. Perhaps there's more to our strategy than you understand, Elena replied calmly. There is no depth to primitive thinking, Zektor said dismissively. You have 6 hours to depart. As the screen went dark, Priya turned to Elena. 5 ships against 1 isn't great odds. Elena raised an eyebrow. Those Estrene ships are perfectly designed, but they've never faced anything like us. What's the plan, Commander? Asked Chen. Something they won't expect, Elena replied with a slight smile. Prepare for unconventional combat tactics. It's time to show the Estrenes what human strategy really looks like. The decisive battle and aftermath. 6 hours later, the 5 Estrene ships approached in perfect formation, their sleek hulls gleaming in the light of Haven's Point's sun as they moved with synchronized precision. They're charging weapons, Priya reported, her voice steady despite the tension. Launch our decoys, ordered Elena. The Perseverance released 8 small objects that appeared on scanners as full-sized ships. A simple trick, but one the Estrenes hadn't encountered before. The Estrenes are adjusting formation, Chen reported. They're spreading out to engage all targets. Elena leaned forward. Now, take us in, full thrust, then cut engines on my mark. The Perseverance surged forward, accelerating directly toward the lead Estrene ship. At the last moment, Elena shouted, Mark. The engines went silent, and the ship's momentum carried it forward, while its heat signature vanished from sensors. An old smuggler's trick that Chen had suggested. They've lost us, Priya said with surprise. The Estrene ships fired on the decoys, their perfect formation becoming a liability as they focused on targets that weren't there. Bring us alongside the lead ship, Elena ordered. Weapons ready. The Perseverance drifted silently into position. On the view screen, they could see the Estrene vessel up close. Beautiful, elegant, and completely unaware of their presence. Fire, Elena commanded. The Perseverance's weapons might not have been the most advanced, but at this range, they didn't need to be. The Estrene ship's perfect hull cracked under the barrage, its systems failing. The other Estrene ships are turning to engage, Priya warned. Evasive pattern Omega, Elena ordered. Chen had designed Omega patterns specifically for this encounter. Instead of the smooth, predictable evasions that most ships used, it involved random thruster bursts, sudden stops, and changes in direction that defied tactical sense. On screen, they watched as the Astrine weapons fired with precision at where the Perseverance should have been based on normal flight patterns. But the human ship was never where it was expected to be. "Their targeting systems can't adapt," Chen said with a grin. "They're designed for perfection against predictable opponents." "Deploy the pulse mines," Alina ordered. Small, innocuous devices drifted from the Perseverance's cargo bay, appearing as mere debris on sensors. When the Astrine ships passed near them, the mines activated, sending electromagnetic pulses through their perfect systems. "Direct hit," Rodriguez called from engineering. "Their shields are fluctuating." Elena smiled. "Now for Phase 2. Open a channel to the colony." The face of Governor Diaz appeared on a secondary screen. "Commander Reyes, we're monitoring the battle. How can we help?" "Activate the ground-based defenses now," Elena instructed. The Astrines had been so focused on the space battle that they'd ignored the seemingly primitive ground installations. Now, powerful electromagnetic beams shot up from the colony's surface, aimed not at the Astrine ships but at the space around them. "What are they doing?" one of the bridge officers asked. "Creating chaos," Elena replied. The beams ionized the dust and debris common in any planetary system, creating an electromagnetic storm that played havoc with the Astrine's perfect sensors. Their formation, previously immaculate, began to waver. "Now hit their flagship with everything we've got," Elena ordered. The battle lasted 28 minutes. When it ended, 2 Astrine ships were disabled, 1 was heavily damaged, and the remaining 2 were retreating at high speed. The bridge crew cheered, but Elena raised her hand for silence. "This was just the first test," she said. "They'll be back, and in greater numbers." On the damaged Astrine flagship, Supreme Tactician Zector stared at the battle recordings with growing frustration. The human vessel had moved in patterns that defied logic. It had shut down systems in the middle of combat, a suicidal tactic by Astrine standards. It had fired from positions no proper warship would take. "Inefficient," he muttered. "Wasteful. Illogical." Yet the humans had won. Supreme Tactician, his second-in-command, approached cautiously. "The High Command requests your report." Zector's eyes narrowed. "Tell them the humans are more unpredictable than anticipated. But it changes nothing. Their victory was luck, not strategy. And if they continue to be lucky, then we will bring more ships," Zector said firmly. "Luck fails against overwhelming force. Perfect execution cannot be defeated by chaos." 3 weeks later, Elena stood on the bridge of the Perseverance as a fleet of 30 Astrine warships entered the Haven's Point system. Earth Command had sent reinforcements, 5 additional ships of various classes, all built with the same philosophy of redundancy and adaptability that the Astrines found so primitive. "They'd brought enough firepower to level the entire colony," Chen observed grimly. "And they're expecting us to fight conventionally," Elena replied. "Which is exactly what we won't do. Open a channel to the fleet." The faces of the other human captains appeared on screen. "Operation Chaos begins now," Elena said. "Remember, coordination without predictability. Each of you has your role, but adapt as necessary. The Astrines expect us to either surrender or die gloriously. Let's disappoint them." The small human fleet broke formation immediately, each ship heading in a different direction. The Astrines, clearly confused by this apparent lack of strategy, maintained their perfect formation as they advanced toward the colony. "They're hailing us," Pryor reported. "Ignore it," Elena ordered. "Let them think our communications are down." The Perseverance dove toward Haven's Point's moon, using its gravity to accelerate to dangerous speeds. 2 Astrine ships broke formation to pursue, exactly as Elena had hoped. "Dump the reactor coolant," she ordered. "Commander," Rodriguez questioned from engineering. "That'll force us to switch to backup power." "Exactly. Do it." The coolant vented into space behind them, instantly freezing into a cloud of crystalline particles. The pursuing Astrine ships, unable to adjust their perfect trajectory quickly enough, flew directly into the cloud. Their advanced sensors, designed to detect energy and movement, were blind to the simple physical hazard. Their hulls, optimized for energy deflection, were scratched and damaged by the countless tiny impacts. Backup power online, Rodriguez reported as the Perseverance's main systems temporarily went dark. Good. Now reverse course. Full emergency thrust. The ship spun 180 degrees and accelerated directly at the damaged Astrian vessels, which were still attempting to clear their sensors. Throughout the system, similar scenes played out. Human ships executed maneuvers that no tactical computer would consider viable. They used their environments in ways the Astrians had never anticipated. They communicated using old-fashioned light signals and prearranged maneuvers rather than the detectable subspace communications the Astrians expected. On the Astrian command ship, High Commander Vexilla watched with growing alarm as the perfect formation of her fleet disintegrated into individual pursuit actions. "What are they doing?" she demanded. "Why don't they maintain proper battle formation?" "They have no formation," Zektor replied, his confidence wavering for the first time. "Each ship acts independently, without central coordination." "That's not possible. No effective military force can function without perfect coordination." Yet the evidence was playing out before their eyes. The human ships were not merely surviving. They were inflicting damage far beyond what their technological level should allow. "The colony is launching something," an Astrian officer reported. On the tactical display, hundreds of small objects rose from Haven's point surface. "Missiles?" Vexilla asked. "No, they're too small, and they're not targeting our ships." The objects, simple drones carrying electromagnetic disruptors, positioned themselves throughout the battlefield, creating a three-dimensional grid of interference zones. The human ships, knowing exactly where these zones were, navigated around them effortlessly. The Astrian vessels, relying on their sensors rather than visual confirmation, blundered into one disruption field after another. 3 hours into the battle, the impossible had happened. The magnificent Astrian fleet was in disarray. 7 ships had been disabled, 12 more damaged, and the rest were struggling to maintain any kind of tactical cohesion. "How is this possible?" Vexilla demanded, her crystalline temples flashing with agitation. "They're using inferior technology. Their tactics violate every principle of strategic warfare." "Perhaps," Zektor said slowly, a terrible realization dawning. "That is precisely why we cannot counter them. Our systems are designed to anticipate logical responses. These humans, they do not think as we do." On the Perseverance, Alina allowed herself a small smile as she watched the Astrian fleet begin to withdraw. "They're retreating." The bridge erupted in cheers, but Alina wasn't finished. "Open a channel to High Commander Vexilla." When the Astrian commander's face appeared on screen, her usual composure was noticeably absent. "Commander Reyes, you have fought unexpectedly well." "We fought as humans always have," Alina replied. "Adaptability isn't a flaw, High Commander. It's our greatest strength." Vexilla was silent for a moment. "The Astrian Empire is not accustomed to reconsideration, but perhaps our assessment of your species was premature." "Perhaps," Alina agreed. "We don't want war, High Commander, but we won't accept subjugation either. We're willing to establish equal relations with the Astrian Empire, as partners, not as a developing species under your guidance. This matter will require discussion at the highest levels of the Empire," Vexilla said. "But I will advocate for reassessment of our approach to humanity." 6 months later, Alina stood in the same perfectly geometric conference room where she had first truly understood the Astrian threat. But this time, the atmosphere was different. High Commander Vexilla sat across from her, but the condescension was gone from her posture. "The treaty is acceptable to the Empire," Vexilla said, placing a crystalline hand on the document between them. "Equal diplomatic relations, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchange programs." Alina nodded. "Earth has approved it as well." As they formally signed the treaty, Vexilla tilted her head curiously. "There is something I still do not understand, Commander Reyes. Your species' approach to technology, to strategy, to everything. It seems so inefficient, yet it proves effective. Why build ships expecting failure? Why plan for the worst instead of perfection?" Elena smiled. "Because the universe is full of surprises, High Commander. Perfection works perfectly until it encounters something new. Humanity's strength isn't in getting everything right the first time. It's in our ability to adapt when things go wrong." "A most unusual philosophy," Vexilla mused. "But perhaps there is wisdom in it that we have forgotten. The Astrine Empire has pursued perfection for so long that we have become rigid. Sometimes the strongest structures are the ones with a little flexibility," Elena suggested. As the Perseverance departed the Astrine station 2 days later, Elena stood on the bridge looking at the stars ahead. The ship's engines hummed with their slightly uneven rhythm. Not perfect, but reliable. Just like humanity itself. "Where to now, Commander?" Chen asked from navigation. Elena smiled. "Wherever the unknown takes us, Lieutenant. That's where humans have always done their best work."